and a very warm welcome to Middle East Matters. I'm Sanam Shantier. Coming up on this week's show, an explosive start for Syria talks in Astana with rebel and government representatives trading accusations and refusing to meet face-to-face. The Islamic State group wreaking havoc in Palmyra once again. A setback for government and Russian forces and a cultural loss for the Syrian people. Plus, the leather-clad, they take to the open road. They are the Ladies of Harley, and they tell us what draws them to riding fast and flying high in none other than Lebanon. We start with a new round of peace talks in the Kazakh capital, which got off to a rocky start on Monday. This after rebel groups refused to meet face-to-face with regime representatives. They accused Bashar al-Assad of repeated violations of the December 30th ceasefire. Now, France 24's Emerald Maxwell takes a look at the main rebel groups represented in Astana.
Heading up the rebel delegation is Mohammed Alouche, a 45-year-old originally from Douma in the suburbs of Damascus. The chief negotiator of the opposition delegation is a leading political figure in Jaish al-Islam, or Army of Islam, a Salafist rebel group backed by Saudi Arabia. Until recently, Russia and Syria called Jaish al-Islam a terrorist organization. In the past, it has cooperated with the Syrian branch of al-Qaeda. But today, Moscow is courting the rebels it previously rejected. And Jaish al-Islam is the main group at the negotiation table in Astana. A table bringing together different factions with different positions. Among the so-called moderate groups is the Fastakim Union, a faction of the Syrian Free Army that was mainly active in the Aleppo region until Bashar al-Assad regained control of the city in December. Another group present is the Sultan Murad division, primarily composed of Syria Turkmen. Heavily supported by Turkey, it's mainly fighting near the Turkish border and has also received military supplies from the West. Among the groups classified as Islamist is Faylaq al-Sham, or the Sham Legion. These rebels are members of the Free Syrian Army and fighting on several fronts, including Idlib, Homs and Latakia. Backed by Turkey and Qatar, they're ideologically close to the Muslim Brotherhood. But divisions run deep within the Syrian opposition, and not all the rebels accepted the invitation to Astana. Ahrar al-Sham is very active in Aleppo and Idlib regions, one of the last remaining opposition strongholds. As one of the main forces in the field, it's a notable absence. The Saudi Arabia and Qatar-backed Salafist group have refused to send a delegation because it accuses Assad's government of violating the December 30th truce deal. Some 15 rebel organizations are represented in Astana. They may seem clearly identified around the negotiation table, but the situation on the ground is more confused. Over time, the groups have formed alliances or fought each other, and fighters often move from one faction to another.
We stay with Syria and the ancient city of Palmyra, which is under attack once again. And the Islamic State group is demolishing even more treasured monuments a month after recapturing it from the government, an act that has been dubbed the cultural cleansing of the Syrian people by UNESCO. Syrian and Russian forces reclaimed the city from jihadists in March, only to lose it 9 months later. Nicholas Rushworth has the story.
The so-called Islamic State group has targeted more World Heritage remains at Palmyra, including a part of the Roman amphitheatre, and also a part of a 4-column tetrapylon structure, much of which is a replica built in the 1960s. Satellite images show the extent of the destruction. It is believed the jihadists have also carried out executions close to the archaeological site. They were forced out of the ancient city last March, but regained it when Russian and Syrian forces were concentrating their efforts on gaining full control of Aleppo, 300 kilometers to the north.
The Russians can't be in two places at once, in the north and in Palmyra, which was left to Syrian troops to protect. There were fewer Russian forces present, and safeguarding the site was down much more to Damascus. And it's proved once again it's not able to hold on to territory.
It is an embarrassing loss for Vladimir Putin. The Russian president appeared on a giant screen during celebrations marking the city's capture from the jihadists last spring. The Assad government is once again trying to regain the city. Its troops are nearby. But time is of the essence. The site was already partially destroyed during the months the jihadists took control before, and is vulnerable once again. It was once one of the most important centers of the ancient world.
After 2 years of political deadlock last October, Lebanon finally got a new president. When he took office, Michel Aoun promised to reform the electoral system to better serve the diverse mix of religious communities. In Lebanon, half of parliamentary seats are reserved for Muslims and half for Christians, and that's not about to change. What the president wants to do is to reform how members of parliament are elected. As Claire Williams explains, not everyone agrees with the upcoming plans.
With its complex mix of different faiths, Lebanon has long struggled to ensure politicians serve members of all communities. President Michel Aoun and his supporters want to transform Lebanon's electoral system into one based on proportional representation, in time for parliamentary elections scheduled for May 21st.
We think a proportional representation system in a country like Lebanon, with its diverse religious population, is the best way of ensuring everyone, including political and religious minorities, is represented.
Lebanon has a winner-takes-all electoral system. That means only the candidates who get the most votes in their areas get a seat in the building behind me, the parliament. Proportional representation aims to ensure all religious communities get a voice. But there are 17 different reform proposals on the negotiating table. And smaller communities like the Druze minority fear the bigger parties will push through a reform that will only suit their interests.
The proportional representation reform would penalise minorities. The particular makeup of communities in our country means it wouldn't work in practice. So we won't accept this reform.
We headed into the mountains outside Beirut to meet the vice president of the Lebanese forces. George Adwan believes electoral reform will shake up Lebanon's stagnant political scene.
We don't want to postpone elections for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, but it's also important to change the law, because if we keep the old law, it means that in a way it's like you postponed elections, because the same people will come back.
Lebanon is used to political standstills, and some people are unconvinced politicians are serious about change this time.
The political debate happening right now is just a show put on for the press. In reality, politicians don't want change. They want things to stay as they are so they can hold on to their seats.
I would like to see a mix of both proportional and winner-takes-all systems in our country.
The Lebanese haven't had a chance to vote since 2009. President Aoun says he's determined elections will take place on schedule this year, with a proportional system firmly in place.
Also in Lebanon, a group of women are defying convention. They are the Ladies of Harley, and they talk to us about the pull of the open road on the back of a bike as part of their group, which was created back in 2009.
Dressed in leather jackets, riding big bikes, Carol, Rania and Talar enjoy letting the throttle go on these Lebanese roads. Their leader, Karine, is taking the group to the old port of Byblos, a common meeting point for Lebanese motorcyclists. Karine is one of the pioneers of women's bike riding in Lebanon. Her determination has encouraged many women to follow in her steps.
When I started 5 years ago, there were only 2 with me, one of whom lived in Dubai. Now there are about 30. Not all of them are here now, but they exist, and in my opinion, we're going to have many more in the coming years.
Claudine just received her motorbike license. This is her first outing with the girls. It's a dream come true for this mother of 3, despite the prejudices of her colleagues and friends.
All of them were skeptical to begin with. For a lot of people, bikes aren't exactly made for girls. It's too heavy, it's too hard, it's too dangerous. But I told them, I can do it, I'll manage it.
But riding in large groups can sometimes cause incidents. This driver believes that the bikers create traffic jams.
It happens often, but the best thing to do is to wear a little bit of red nail polish. When they realize that we're girls, everything runs more smoothly. They're a lot less aggressive with women than men. So in fact, it's an advantage to be a woman.
In general, though, the bikers are welcomed, perhaps even to the point of stirring a little admiration.
Everything is limited in Lebanon when you are a woman. Well, I think when I see ladies who are independent and they're doing their own thing, they're following their passion, I think that's wonderful.
Some of the riders are especially invested, like Talar, the first woman to have been the director of a Harley-Davidson club in the Arab world. Her family actually encouraged her to return to biking, a passion that she abandoned to raise her children.
When I think about what biking is and how it returned to my life, then I say to myself it's an infection that enters your blood, and then you have no choice but to feed it unless you want it to gnaw at you. When you get the urge, you have to go with it, and then it starts. It's a kind of medicine.
In a troubled region, Lebanon is, in some ways, an exception for these women who aim to continue spreading their passion for biking.
Well, that's it for this week's edition of Middle East Matters. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Do stay tuned to France 24.